What's up, you guys? Your boy Ben Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC. I'm sure a lot of you guys have received the news by now, but just a little bit of a refresher for a lot of the people that have not heard the news. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of all charges in the murder of George Floyd back in Memorial Day of last year. Um, as of 4:30 this afternoon in Hennepin County District Court in Minneapolis, um, Derek Chauvin was convicted on all charges of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. According to CNN, the jury deliberated for more than 10 hours over 2 days in the upcoming decision. Um, Wearing a mask inside the Hennepin County Courthouse in Minneapolis, Chauvin had no apparent reaction to the guilty verdict, and afterwards, his bail was revoked and he was placed in handcuffs and removed from the court through a side door. Now, according to CNN as well, Chauvin could face up to 40 years in prison for the second degree murder, up to 25 years for third degree murder, and up to 10 years for manslaughter. According to the Minnesota sentencing guidelines, recommends about 12 and a half years for prison for each murder charge and about 4 years of the manslaughter charge. However, in this case, the state has asked for a tougher sentence than recommendations provided below, and Derek Chauvin's sentence is set for 8 weeks from now. The verdict comes 11 months after excoriating bystanders showed video of Chauvin and passively kneeling the neck and back of George Floyd, handcuffed and lying prone on the street for about 9 minutes and 29 seconds on May 25th, 2020. Under the officer's knees, the 46-year-old man gasped for air and previously exclaimed, "I can't breathe," and ultimately went silent when he ultimately died. So that's pretty much what it is. So here's my 2 cents on the whole thing. Um, I'm kind of relieved that they actually got this right. I mean, just by watching the trial from start to finish, I mean, it was pretty much the video pretty much explains everything for itself. And you knew that the defense was going to try to use his so-called health issues to try to explain to the fact that Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd at all, and there was no way that this was going to end well for him, especially when he decided to take the put the to plead the fifth and not taking the stand to try to show remorse or anything like that. That, to me, in my view, showed that he didn't really give 2 cents about George Floyd's life, and he didn't really care about it at all, and he showed no remorse about for what he did. And even though that the jury was not supposed to use that in terms of what their decisioning, you cannot excuse the fact that that played a major role in the jury's decision into deciding the guilty verdict. And I tell you this, though, I'll be honest with you. When I when I was watching the trial, I was skeptical because we've seen a lot of these situations before many, many times. And a lot of the times, even with all the evidence that is shown on videotape, pictures, everything else in between, it pretty much it always gets swept under the rug, and most of the times the opposite would be to get a mistrial or no verdict or not guilty plea. And in this case, you know, I think, to be honest with you, they was just pretty much it was pretty much the police community just pretty much gave up on Derek Chauvin, because if you look at his previous records as a police officer, numerous complaints left and right, you know, lots of bad stuff about this guy. And I think that was just pretty much a token to say, hey, we don't want nothing to do with this guy. Here, take him. You know what I mean? And so, you know, it is what it is. The only thing I hope for out of this is that this is going to, spark a lot more, more of these more change in terms of pushing legislation to try to stop police brutality against black people and minorities. And the big thing that I hope for that I hope to see out of this is to take away granted immunity from a lot of these law enforcements. All right. What it is that basically an officer can get basically a lifetime pension after completing his career as a police officer. That's a broad, definition. But if you take away, granted immunities from these police officers, you know what I mean, and basically put more pressure on them to not try to commit these acts, I bet you one thing: a lot of these murders would go down. But it's going to take a lot of heavy legislation to make it possible. And we know that both Republicans and Democrats, there's a lot of them that do not support that idea at all. So I would really think that, in my view, just my personal opinion, that there should be a black political coalition that should be donating money to both sides of the fence to push votes and legislation to make sure that a lot of these laws get passed through Congress. So that way, with a lot of these situations like this, never happen again. You know what I mean? But I'm going to be anxiously waiting on the sentencing. If he doesn't get at least 40 years to life, you know what I mean, then it's going to be a huge slap in the face. All right. And the thing that really, the really thing that really caught me was is that how a lot of the people in the city were just, pretty much in celebratory mood, but also I wanted to look at more at the responses of the other side of the fence of the so-called police supporters, the racists out there, and boy were they crying their ass out, and boy they were outraged. There were a lot of people that felt like that Derek Chauvin didn't deserve to be guilty, and that George Floyd deserved to die. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep it at that. I'm sure a lot of you can picture a lot of the things that they've said. But the only thing that can combat racism is this. We must continue to keep fighting on by pushing out the truth and pushing out all of nothing but the truth. You know what I mean? People just like people say, people can't handle the truth. Same for these racists. They can't handle the harsh reality of the truth. And that the fact that no matter how much they try to push their white supremacy, at the end of the day, they are typically going to lose because they're going to fall victim to their own stubble standards. You know what I mean? And that's all I'm going to pretty much say about that. But looking at this from a broader point of view, the only hope I can see, that I hope that see out of this is that hopefully we'll see a lot more, more legislation and more, exposure to the issue at hand here. All right, this moment is a huge moment in American history because now is really what's going to enforce the point that black people's lives do matter, but also that you can't just abuse your power as a police officer and pretty much can get away with scream bloody murder, especially that one female officer out in Brooklyn Park, Kim Potter, who basically murdered that little boy. All right, how can you sit here and try to justify saying that it was an accident when you were trying to reach for your taser, but you actually pulled out your gun? All right. There's no excuse for that. And I hope that she gets the same fate that Derek Chauvin is going to get. You know what I mean? But that's just my 2 cents. You know what I mean? This time around, they make sure they got the verdict right. You know what I mean? But trust me, there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more wrong verdicts down the line, and people are going to assume that that the war police brutality is over. No, it's not. The war is still continuing. And trust me, there's gonna be a lot more names like George Floyd, like Ahmaud Arbery. You know what I mean? Breonna Taylor. You know what I mean? Jamal Clark, Philando Castile. You know what I mean? A lot more names. So the point is, guys, the war is going to continue, and we must continue on to the fight against racism and bigotry and basically social injustices against black people and minorities, man. That's what we got to keep on fighting, and we cannot continue and we cannot give up on the fight. All right, we got to continue on fighting for our survival, man. Because we have to make sure that these names that I just named, a lot more like them, are not left in vain. And certainly George Floyd, his life was wrongfully taken away, but he's in a better place. But more importantly, his name and the impact that is brought on to this country will never, ever be forgotten. All right. So that's just my 2 cents. You never know what you think in the comment section below. And with that, I'm out. Peace.